Okay. All right. So we are going to, first of all, Tashina, thank you so much for agreeing to do this live with me. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And it's not too often that I see groups of introverts having a conversation
Yeah.
about being an introvert, right? And so I think today's conversation with us kind of talking about our experiences and our clients' experiences are going to help a lot of different people. And so as our guests are joining, maybe we could start with just introductions of who we are, um, maybe how we first knew that we were introverts, and then we can dive into some of the best practices for introverted leaders. Does
Mhm.
that feel good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right. You go first,
All
please.
right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tashina Braxton. I'm an executive leadership and team coach, and I am from San Francisco, California. So if you're wondering where I'm at in the world, that's where I am. And I've worked with hundreds of teams and leaders, really just solving huge business problems or fostering trust on the teams. I kind of come in a lot for the trust building and the like conflict management with teams. So that's like an interesting just spin on my team coaching. And I am an introverted leader for sure. Like I am so introverted and I know that I am because of what I need to kind of refuel myself. And so it's things like I need a lot of alone time. I like to, you know, gather my thoughts. I know when I'm tired and I'm at capacity, I need some time. And I want to say that I've started labeling myself introvert maybe in the past couple of years. It hasn't been long at all. For me, so I'm also an Enneagram
Mhm.
certified coach. And so if you guys don't know what Enneagram, it's a personality tool, kind of tells you who you are and your tendencies. And I remember taking this test and the results came back. And in the results, it really talked about how much alone time I needed and how much, like, some of the feedback was so horrible about me as an introvert. Like, I could be aloof, I could be distant, like all these different things.
Yeah.
And when I just worked with a coach and I started training others myself, I started to notice like, I am an introvert because it's not that I don't want to be connected with people, but it's that I need a lot of setup and a lot of like nervous system regulation for me to be on like a high energetically for
Yeah.
long periods of time. And so I've started to just operate in this way, knowing myself and knowing what I need as a leader, an introverted leader. And I've just, this is, I've built my coaching practice around that and my career around that. And I kind of like it. It works for me.
Yeah. 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 Well,
Yeah.
I like you. We like you.
Yeah.
So it
Yes.
works for us as well.
Yes.
Um, so I think my experience has been a little bit different. I mean, I first knew that I was an introvert from when I was a little girl.
Mhm.
When I was probably like 7 or 8, and everybody else was on the block was outside and they were playing with each other and having a
Mhm.
good time. And I would want to be in my room reading my book, and my mom was like, "What is wrong with you? Like, what? Why will you?" Like, she had to force me outside,
Yeah.
out of
Oh,
the
wow.
house. So I knew I was a little different, even when I was a little girl. But
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know the word introvert at that time, but I knew that I preferred my own alone time. Like I enjoyed other people's company, but I needed a lot of alone time to be able to enjoy other people's company, if that
Mhm.
makes any
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
But then when I
Yeah.
got older, and definitely when I entered the work world, I knew I was an introverted leader. I mean, I knew I was introverted for much of the same reasons that you just said. So, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
I came up in an era where networking meant spending physical time with people.
Mhm.
Whether it's at the social hour after work, or happy hour after work, or in person conferences, or any, going to town hall meetings where everybody was gathered in an auditorium of some sort, or
Yeah.
all of those gatherings, I would have such anxiety beforehand. Like I wasn't speaking
Mhm.
at them, but just
Mhm.
going and knowing that I had to engage with people,
Yeah.
I would lie. I would make up excuses. I'd be like, oh, I gotta go home because somebody's
Yeah.
sick, or oh, I like whatever I could come up with, I would
Yep.
try to avoid it, right?
Yep.
Um, so I knew I was like, yeah, you definitely a little bit different than anybody
Yeah.
else. Um, so yeah, so it was all of those things, and then finally, just like you, Tashina, I did take several different tests, including the Myers-Briggs
Mhm. Mhm.
assessment, and
Yep.
I always scored. Sometimes your Myers-Briggs shifts a little bit over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
On the introvert scale, I
Yeah.
always was all the way
Yeah.
I. So that
Yeah.
has never changed for me over decades of work. So yeah, that's those kind of reinforcement things verified or validated that
Yeah.
I'm an introvert for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It-
Same. That all resonates with me so much. It's like, how can I get out of this? What's the excuse? I'm just gonna,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep, yep. And I'm sure you guys who are listening, you're
Yeah.
here now or listening to the replay. I am confident that some of the things that Tashina mentioned, some of the things that I mentioned, you probably were like, yup, yup, that's
Uh-huh.
me, that's
Yep.
me.
Yep.
Because it's a common experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And no one is ever able to exactly pinpoint the percentage of introverts in the world, right?
Right.
But we definitely know we're not necessarily in the majority of
Right.
numbers. I think it's a common experience for any one person to have
Mhm.
extroverted and introverted
Yeah.
traits and experiences. But when it comes to which one might be more predominant in your
Right.
personality, those of us who claim introverts are definitely not in the majority, and we're
Yeah.
definitely not in the majority as leaders in
Right. Right.
organizations.
Yeah.
So, which is why Tashina and I wanted to even have this conversation
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I will. What Tashina and I had agreed to talk about today was just, frankly, we know how lonely of an experience it can feel like
Mhm.
as a leader in an organization. Now, you might be watching us today and here with us today. You might be in a small organization, right? Maybe a small nonprofit. You might be in a large company. Either way, I
Mhm.
can almost guarantee that there are not a lot of other introverted leaders in particular, that you're engaging with on a day-to-day basis. And so one of the things we wanted to do was, first of all, just normalize that introversion and being a leader are not mutually exclusive. In
Yeah.
fact, some of the best leaders in the world are both
Right.
introverted
Yeah.
and leaders, right? And then the second thing we wanted to do was just talk about, from both of our perspectives, just talk about some best practices that we each have experienced in us being introverted leaders, but the fact that we also coach other leaders who are introverted. We've learned some things over the years that we think you can add to your kind of leadership toolkit
Right.
that might be helpful, right?
Yep.
Anything
Yep.
else you want to add to that, Tashina, before we kind of start
No,
with our?
that's good. And just, recognizing that we do both claim ourselves as introverted leaders. Coach is our role, it's a job we do, but at the end of the day, we're both leaders, just like a lot of you that are watching as well. And so we are sharing our own experiences, and there may be nuances, and there may be things that are very like, I resonate with. But whatever works for you, because we also know that introverts are like, yeah, I probably won't do that. But these are things that we've learned to practice over time to make us effective.
Yeah,
And so, wherever you are in your journey and learning this and becoming aware of being an introvert, we accept all of that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. You want to go first? You want me to go? How do you want to do this in terms of best
Yeah.
practice?
Yeah. You jump in. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is one. So just in full disclosure, Tashina and I, before jumping on today's live, we maybe probably for the last week or two, we have actually talked with each other and came up with like a list of different best practices that we wanted to share. What we've decided is we're just going to wing it. We're not going to
Yeah.
go bullet
Yeah.
point by bullet point. But one that we probably I didn't even think of until just now was a best practice that I've found personally, and frankly, I will be honest and say I had to learn this over time.
Mm.
But the best practice I want to share is about setting boundaries for yourself
Mm.
as an introverted leader, right? So
Yes.
I'll
Mm.
speak from my personal
Yeah.
experience and say that particularly as I moved up in leadership, right? So, I started off as a supervisor of a small team all the way up to, running an entire function for a multinational, international company, right? But when you move up in leadership in particular, the more draw on you and your personal resources, your time, your energy, all of that stuff tends to happen, right? And it's at greater and greater volumes. As an introverted leader, one of the things that I didn't learn until much later on in my career is that I have to protect my time, those limited resources, because
Right.
for me as an introvert in particular, if if I don't, then I am not able to perform at my best. I can't
Right.
even think at the higher level that I'm needed to think at, right?
Right.
I can't sustain myself throughout the day, right? Like, so I have when I think about a best practice for you as an introverted leader, and honestly, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you are a chief of
Right.
some sort. The fact that you the fact of the matter is it is extremely important, probably more important for us as introverts than others who might be ambiverts or extroverts, to
Right.
truly know what your boundaries are and protect your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So an example for me is that like every time I take on a new team or a new group of people who come to work for me and with me, I make a point to be transparent about the fact that I am an introvert
Mm-hmm.
and what that means, right? Because I want people to understand when I'm making decisions or when I'm not accessible. Like, I want them to know why. And it's not because of them or me, like our relationship, but it is about me being able to consistently be there and do my best,
Yeah.
right? So I remember a time where I was taken over. I was brought in to take over a department. The department was probably about 50, 60 people. And my predecessor was beloved. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they were like BFFs. They would go out all, like, she and the entire team. It was like a social club,
Oh,
right?
wow.
She would take them out. She would treat them to lunch. They had worked together for like 10 years. And their expectation was I was going to come in and behave in the same way.
Wow.
And so I very early on had to be like, I'm not here to be your friend. Like,
Yeah.
I literally, that is what I said. And
Yeah.
I know I said that because they have regurgitated that to
Yeah.
me time after time. I
Yeah.
can't believe you said you weren't here to be our friend. I wasn't. Like, I had
Right.
to lay that boundary out, because when I wasn't giving them what they thought, like, this is a group they were high performing, high
Mm-hmm.
performing team, but they got their energy from each other. And
Right.
so when I wasn't giving them what they expected
Yeah.
socially, they were like, what's going on? Like, and they weren't motivated to perform or continue to perform at that high level.
Yeah.
So I had to have that come to Jesus and be like,
Right.
okay, this is my boundary. This is why. I know it's different from what you've experienced
Yeah.
before, but this is how it has to be going forward if we're all going to continue to be successful, right?
Right.
So I share that because it may feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel good to me to have that conversation, but I
Yeah.
also knew that I was going to continue to disappoint them
Mhm.
because I wasn't going to be able to show up like my extroverted predecessor,
Right.
particularly from a social standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Like I totally resonate with all of what you said. Um, when we talk about boundaries, what's interesting and what, came up for me as you were talking is like it gets harder when you're an ambitious introvert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've always classified myself as being very ambitious and wanting to like get whatever I can get and be successful at whatever I put my hands on. And I recall, like, for most of my life, I was taught that I needed to go to the networking events just like yourself, or that I needed to be like the social butterfly. And I had to be all of these things to be successful. And each and every time I tried to do it, it felt cringy. It felt awkward.
Mhm.
It felt like, this is not me. Like, I am not being authentic right now at all. Like, why am I
Mhm.
doing this? And so one of the best practices that I had to start putting in place for myself was being proactive in what I would involve myself with so that it didn't feel like somebody was telling me what I had to do, but I had full choice and agency in what I was going to do.
Okay.
And so the boundary for me was like, I'm going to participate in things that I don't have to talk to a lot of people, but I can contribute to whatever it is. And I always give this example, and it's like a cheesy example, I know. But in the last organization that I worked with, I remember when I was first hired, and they had all these like little teams, right? Like planning teams. One of the teams was called a fun team. And
Mm.
so for me, I was like, oh, okay, let me join the fun team because I know that I won't really have to do like technical work, but I could kind of be involved and plan like the little office parties and things like that. And I didn't really have to talk to people as much because I would be in planning mode. And so by me positioning myself inside of like this fun team, I started to be able to find what was common between me and other people. And so, like, it would be natural that we're both steeped in the same similar work. And so, yeah, I could talk about that, right? Because
Right.
one of my things that has always been hard for me is like starting conversations and being surface level and things like that. And so, one of the things that I kind of put into place was like, okay, I'm only going to show up for the things that actually make sense, that felt low lift, didn't feel like it was a lot of energy on me, and didn't require me to always perform or be there because it was a volunteer job.
Right.
But for
Right.
things that were like part of my job, that felt harder. And so I had to be more, like intentional about what I was going to do. Another example is like, I'm a mom, I'm a mom of four, and I can't tell you that I have a lot of boundaries at home. And there's always things pulling on me like all the freaking time. And so, over the past couple of years, and I think my husband kind of caught this out for me and noticed that I was doing this, was I need time to myself for a while where I can sit in my bed by myself, not even with him, like just by myself
Yeah.
for at least an hour before he comes into the bed.
Oh, that's
Or another thing I used to do was sit in the car before I came in the house. Like I would literally drive up to my house, sit outside in the car for like 30 to 40 minutes and just sit in the car and just like decompress,
yeah.
because that's what I needed to like have my time. And over time, like my kids figured it out, my husband figured it out. And it was like my boundary is shaped by how much I need to actually refuel to be able to perform again.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to set up those things very strategically now. I can't tell you that I've always been very intentional because, again, I was an ambitious introvert. I was
Yeah.
told these are all the things you have to do if you want to make it. And so now I'm like, you know what? That's not, I can be different. I can be a different type of leader, a different type of coach than what everybody says is the right thing. And so that's kind of how I've started to lead my introverted self and ensure
Yeah.
that I have what I need by creating those boundaries.
Yeah. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, I was thinking about rituals because what you
Yes.
were just talking about, right?
Yes.
So boundaries, yes,
Yeah.
but then also
Yes.
whether by accident
Yeah.
or deliberateness,
Yeah.
we each fall into or figure out like what we
Right.
need in order to what we need for ourselves in order to deliver for others or to
Yes.
deliver for the organizations that
Yes.
we are working for.
Yep.
And for many of us as introverts, they do fall into rituals. Like
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
I can think of, for example, when anytime I'm about to do some public speaking,
Yeah.
like I have rituals. Like,
Yes.
yes, I have to prep. Yes, I need
Yes.
to, right? Like, I don't need to
Yes.
memorize everything, but I
Right.
have to do the mental work to be like,
Yes.
okay, you're gonna say how are you gonna say it? But beforehand, I don't talk to nobody like an
Right.
hour before. Like
Yes.
I don't take any clients. I
Yes.
don't go to meetings. I
Yep.
block my calendar because I just need that mental space so I can be
Yes.
100% on when
Yes.
I'm talking. And I block my calendar right after too,
Yes.
because I just want to lay down on the floor after
Yes.
I do it, right? But those are rituals. But you
Yeah.
do have to not just know yourself, but you have to admit
Right.
and make it okay for yourself
Right.
to have those rituals.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
because there's a lot of shame sometimes and guilt that comes with being an
Yeah,
introvert because you're like, I'm not as, open or fun or all these different like
yeah,
things we start to judge ourselves by. And so once we make it okay for ourselves to be who we are and
mhm,
to find what makes us successful and what makes us feel good, that's when things start to click. That's when we, not only do we accept it, now others are accepting of that.
yeah,
But we have to admit it, to your point. We have to.
yeah, yep. Okay. Um, okay, so we've talked about creating boundaries. We've talked about rituals.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. We talked a little bit about being an introvert leader, not just in the office, but also at home and
Yes.
what that kind of looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, can we talk about uh like communication? I know you
Yeah.
mentioned that beforehand in terms of unique attributes or unique circumstances, particularly for introverted leaders. So
Yeah.
say a little bit more about what you've experienced, what you experience
Yeah.
with your clients around
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. So I know in our setup we had a little bit about like the written communication, but there was also some things we were talking about with the deeper conversations. And I am an introvert, but I'm an introvert who loves deeper conversations. And I think it comes from a place of like, it's really hard for me to be at the surface level. And it's really hard for me to be like quick on my toes or quick with an answer because I'm such a thinker. A lot of introverts, as you know, we do a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection. And so for us or for myself, I really have to be prepared. I have to know what I'm talking about, which is why I don't like the surface level conversations. But when there's a deep conversation that I really enjoy, and it feels good, it's almost like you wouldn't know that I actually am an introvert because it's a topic that I care about, I'm connected to, and I can go deep. And so that feels good. I'm not going to say it doesn't take my energy because after I have those deep conversations, I am kind of wiped
Yeah.
out still,
Yeah.
which is why I know that I'm an introvert, but it feels natural for me. Like, as an introvert, I don't want to feel inauthentic. I want to
Mhm.
feel natural, right? Now, when it comes to written conversations, whether it's email, Slack, text message, I'm all for written conversations. Like, I would rather shoot you an email. I always say, especially as a team coach, like, if we don't have to meet, let's not meet. Shoot an email. Like, let's not waste our time in meetings after meetings. One, because I really don't want to be in a meeting. And two, that could have been an email.
Yeah.
But I also know everything, the body language, the tone, and things like that, especially within conflict, can be hard, can be more difficult to interpret by text or Slack or email or things like that. I'm working with a team now who all they do is email, and everything gets taken out of context. Everything.
Yep.
And so I realize, like, there is kind of like a give and take with that, where, like, as an introvert, knowing what conversations, again, this is in the preparation, this is in the reflection, knowing what type of conversations make sense for written versus what conversations need to be made in person. And just knowing that about yourself, and then preparing yourself in a way that you are ready for those type of conversations that need to be in person. And so for me, it's like, I can have the conversation, but I definitely want to be prepared. I want to know what we're talking about. You know, when we talk about feedback or things like that, like, give me a rundown of what we're talking about so I'm prepared, so I don't feel, it's nothing worse than being unprepared and having to be present for a conversation as an introvert.
Yeah.
Meet me 50 halfway, right?
Yeah.
At least prepare me so that I know, like, I'm prepared and know what I'm going to say, but it's not taking me out double.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, communication it's a hard one. And because we deal with so many different personalities on a day-to-day basis, it is, you know, it is difficult. And I know you're going to go share your best practices too, but there's also the one-on-one coaching aspect of it, of like being the introvert. And a lot of times you don't know what your clients are going to bring up.
Yeah.
And so being prepared and like what type of questions you may ask, or how will you get deeper, or how will you, you know, be on top of your feet or whatever, to say like, okay, this is how I need to coach this person through it.
Yeah.
Because as an introvert, again, my style is like, I'm just not quick in that way. And so there's a lot of like deepness that I like to go and to talk about before giving solutions and, you know, sharing what I think somebody should do.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think for me, the takeaway there is, you know, when someone is bringing up something that you want to think about or need to think about more deeply, it's okay to be like, you know what, give me a day. Let me come back to you. You know, let me, you know, is there any other information I need to know before I go away and kind of think about it? I think that that's fine, because I can guarantee you that even those who want an immediate answer, they would much prefer to have a higher quality answer if it's going to be delayed for 24 hours versus something that's rushed and not going to meet their needs. So I was actually thinking about as you were talking, I was thinking about team meetings, right? So as an introverted leader, you need to know also what would be important is for you to set the tone in terms of how and when your team meets, what those meetings are like, creating space for both your extroverts, your introverts, and your ambiverts to have, you know, to be able to bring their best to those kind of meetings. And I think you're right. The worst thing that can happen is to have no meetings at all, or everything is a meeting, right? But figuring out what, based on the work that you guys do and the deliverables that you have, how often do you actually have to meet as a group, versus and what those topics need to be, versus your one-on-ones with your direct reports, how often that right? Like, so I come from a world where you had to have one-on-ones every week, and you had to have skill levels every month, and then you have to
Right.
have your team meeting
Yep.
once or twice a week. Like
Yep.
in this day and age where information flows so much more,
Yeah.
you don't have to stick to those. You can
Yeah.
truly, and I will always encourage introverted leaders. You don't have to make the decision by yourself either. You have a
Exactly.
team. Ask the damn
Yes.
team. How often do you guys think you need to
Yes.
meet? What should our agenda be? And my favorite thing to do as an introverted leader is not to own the damn agenda. I want
Yes.
the team to be like, okay, we're gonna
Yes.
rotate people
Right.
owning this
And
agenda or whatever. If somebody
right.
takes on the note taking, somebody takes on
Yep.
the agenda, setting,
Yep.
like whatever. Like I don't own the
Yeah.
agenda. It's
Yeah.
got to be collectively owned. But
Yeah.
those are some tips that I would say that um and I think you can learn, like I always think about and encourage introverted leaders to be aware of the rhythm of the broader
Right.
organization. You can
Right.
set the culture for your specific team,
Yeah.
but you have to acknowledge that you are operating in a larger environment, right? A broader environment,
Yep.
so that you sure how often you meet sets the purpose of your group, but then
Right.
also doesn't disadvantage them from. So, for example, if information flows like very quickly within your organization, if
Yeah.
you only meet with your team and communicate with your team once a month, they're always going to
That's
be
true.
behind. So
Right.
you got to take in the broader
Yes.
context before you set the guidelines for your actual
Yes.
team.
Yes.
But the good news is you get to set the guidelines. Like you and your team get to co-create what you want it to be like. So I think that is important to think about from an introverted leader's standpoint. How often you meet, what your meetings look like, who owns the agenda, all of that stuff. And I think the good news is you don't have to own it. You literally get to co-create it with your team.
Mhm. That part right there, that last part is what I love, is like, you do not have to do this by yourself.
Mhm.
Like, asking for help, delegating, and getting
Mhm.
other people to kind of fill in for where you may not feel comfortable or your personality just doesn't match, and getting those people to support you is like, that is the key to still being an effective leader, because not only are you kind of taking the pressure off yourself, but you're giving other people an opportunity for their own development. You're empowering your team and the people around you to be able to make decisions and to own different things. And like, so it all works, which is why being an introvert isn't a bad thing. It's
Great
just
thing.
like, how do we know, how do we figure out how to navigate through all of this so that it works out for us and for everyone else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
The other thing I will say is if you are an introverted leader and you find yourself not being able to delegate, or you find yourself not wanting to delegate, like not wanting to share the responsibility or the control or etc., then that's a problem. And
Yeah.
so I would point out that it's a problem that you're either very junior in your trajectory, right? Which is
Right.
fine. We all learn over time. Or if you are in a senior role and you're still unable to delegate or unwilling to delegate, you
Mhm.
have a control issue.
Right.
And that at some point that's going to block you from continuing to grow. So it would behoove us to figure out what the source of that problem is and figure out how to solve it.
Yeah.
'Cause it's gonna stunt your growth,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
if you don't take care of
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're speaking, girl. You're speaking. Yes.
Okay, so I know that in your and just to clarify, so Tashina does both one-on-one coaching and she works with teams as
Yes.
well, right? From my perspective, I do one-on-one coaching, but I also serve in executive roles inside
Mhm.
organizations to this day. So we we
Yeah.
we we have overlap and then we have some differences. What I was going to ask you was whether or not, as you are working with your teams, is there anything else that you observe basically when you are seeing introverted leaders, like anything else that kind of pops to your mind as like either trends or common experiences that come up as part of your teamwork that you think is relevant to talk about?
Yeah, so I have a theory
Okay.
about introversion, and
Bring it.
this may be a little spicy. And I have no research or anything to back this up. This is just my
Okay.
theory.
This is
Um,
Tashina, just for
yes,
the record.
yes,
This is not research backed.
research.
Okay. This is Tashina's
Bye.
working
Yes,
theory.
exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I have a working theory, especially when it comes to corporate environments and when it comes to people of color. And I worked with a team where before the team we did this little check-in. And the check-in was something around like I forget exactly how I phrased it, but it was like, are you an introvert, extrovert, ambivert? And there was a mixture of different backgrounds in this group, race wise. But most of the people of color put that they were introverted. And so I kind of got to thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder what this is. I wonder where this is coming from. Are we all actually introverts?
Was
Go
it
ahead.
males and females
And
who were?
males and females.
Okay.
Yep. And I said to myself, I wonder if we've been conditioned to watch, to wait, to see, to assess situations before we jump in, which makes us feel like we are introverts because it's a place of safety for us to like really keep ourselves safe. And so this is something that I've been kind of like just exploring and watching and trying to pay attention to. And I'm sure the audience, I hope your audience has something, to contribute to the conversation as well as yourself. But it's something that I've been thinking about of, is introversion and extroversion attached to the level of safety that you believe you have? Or is it truly your personality because that's what it is? Because I know in different contexts and different situations, I could be the most extroverted person. But when majority of the time, even as a coach, I've had to learn how to be myself, but also there's a part of me that's like, but I still have to have safety when I'm working with teams. So maybe I need to be quiet a little bit more introverted. And so I've just, this is something that I'm like just thinking through, and I'm just curious, like, as I say that to you, I haven't said that out loud to a lot of people, but what's your take on it?
Girl, you done opened up a can of worms. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna refer to it as Tashina's
Yes.
working theory
Yes.
of introverted extroversion, right?
Yes.
So as you were sharing your working theory, lots of things were going through my mind.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are listening and watching the replays, for those of us who are here in person, I didn't say this as part of my introduction, but I am a psychologist by trade, right?
Okay.
And by training.
Yeah.
And so I know that outside of Tashina's working theory, that introversion and extroversion, it's a personality trait. That it is a personality trait, right? And personality traits do not shift. They don't shift over time.
Yeah.
You can change your behavior in certain circumstances and certain settings to counter your natural personality, but your personality is not shifting. You're just acting in a different way for a temporary period of time,
right?
Because of the circumstances that you're in, right?
Yeah.
And so what you just described, first of all, I think it is very interesting that it is the people of color who will self-identify as being introverts. But I'm willing to bet that some of them are introverts and some of them are not introverted. But they are behaving in an introverted way in that environment, in their work environment or in that team or whatever, because they have been conditioned to be that way. Literally,
Yes.
we've been conditioned.
Yes.
I'm not going to say they, we
Yes.
have been conditioned as people of color,
Yes.
when we're normally operating in predominantly white business environments.
Yeah.
And most of us have come through predominantly white educational
Yep.
institutions. We're
Yep.
right, like we're going into, we operate in a predominantly non-black or
Yeah.
non-person of color world,
Yeah.
and we're working and probably even being led by a person who's not a person of color, right? And so, yes, through all of that conditioning, yeah, I'm willing to concede that over time we have either taught ourselves or learned from other people to behave in more introverted ways,
Yeah.
or introverted traditional ways, like being more quiet, observing more than speaking, or being very thoughtful about the words
Right.
we use when we communicate,
Mhm.
or whatever. Like all of those things are, they feel to me like more careful treading of
Yes.
the environment. Whereas if you go home and you talking to Pookie and you shouting at Pookie and
Yeah.
you're not watching what you say,
Yeah.
that's not your
Not in-person.
natural, how you
Yeah.
act at work is not your
Yeah.
natural way you
Yeah.
show. You've
Yeah.
just been conditioned, whether you've done it
Right.
to yourself or the environment has done it to you, but that's not
Right.
who we are. That's
Yeah.
what I thought about when you said that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I've seen that too. Like I haven't done done the exercise and
Right.
people self-select, but I've seen the behavior for sure.
Yeah.
And then when it's just me and them, me and just the people of color,
Right.
they're gregarious and they
Right.
can't stop
Yeah.
talking, da, da, da. But when it's a mixed group, it's not like that.
It's
And
not that. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So I would ask your audience, like, have you saw those differences in yourself, and like, are you truly as introverted as you may say you are, or is it a circumstance of conditioning?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is
I know I kind of like twist, turned the
no, that's
corner a little
like
bit. Yes.
mirror, like
Yes.
hold the mirror up basically, and
Yes.
either you can look yourself in the eye in that
Yeah.
mirror
Yep.
or you're looking sideways. But it is, I think that is a tough question. Like, so obviously we talk about that, and I think about code switching, and I talk about code switching a
Yeah.
lot in my
Yeah.
content. I don't always think about, like, in that circumstance, I wouldn't necessarily label that code switching, right? Code switching to
Yeah.
me has to be like a you're making a conscious choice
Yeah.
to show up differently in different environments,
Yeah.
right? And basically out of fear or concern that there's going to be retribution for you showing up the way you would normally show up,
Right.
essentially, or you don't trust the environment to treat you fairly if you show up the way you naturally would show up.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
what you just described, it feels like there's a little bit of unconscious, subconscious thing going on there, where
Right.
there's not necessarily a true awareness, which
Yeah.
what you're asking us to
Right.
do now,
Yeah.
which is check yourself, like ask
Yeah.
yourself, look
Yeah.
at your behavior.
Yeah.
Is it your natural? Are you naturally predisposed to it, or are you navigate? Are you basically navigating in a
Right.
way that you are not even aware that you're
Right.
kind of showing up in this different way? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways you can figure that out is based on what you need for your own energy levels. Like looking back at your energy, because I definitely need alone time. I definitely need to refuel and be alone. And you talked about reading books. I love reading. Like I definitely need that to
Yeah,
feel sane,
yeah,
to
yeah,
feel like I can manage myself. Whereas some people are just like, at work, I like to just stick to myself, and I like to be quiet, and, but, when I get home, that's when I can be myself.
Yeah.
Like, there's,
Yeah.
like, this different person all of a sudden, but awareness is key in these moments, whether you do say you are an introvert, being aware about what you need for yourself in order to be successful, in order to be the leader who you wanna be, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say one more thing about that. We didn't necessarily do a full definition of introversion versus
Yeah. Yeah.
extroversion, but I think in this instance, it's important at this point in time, it's
Yeah.
probably important to point out that introversion doesn't mean quiet,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of
Exactly.
introverts who actually are not quiet.
Yeah.
But introversion doesn't equal quiet.
Yeah.
Introversion is, again, it is a psychological person, it's a personality trait
Yeah.
that has been researched for
Yeah.
hundreds of years
Yeah.
at this point in time. But the true definition of an introvert is an individual who recharges their energy, particularly their social energy,
Yeah.
mental energy, emotional energy, but recharges their energy by having time alone internally, right?
Yes.
Like, right. An extrovert does the opposite.
Yes.
Their energy by engaging socially with other people, right? It also doesn't mean
Loud.
right, exactly.
For
So,
extroverts.
like, and I will say, like, you can be an introvert, you can recharge, you can be in a crowd. An introvert can be in a crowd and be recharging because they're physically in that crowd, but inside of
Yeah.
themselves is where their mind has checked out. They are
Yep.
literally recharging, but
Mhm.
physically with other people, right?
Mhm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean about being alone versus in a crowd
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
being with five
Yeah.
people. It really is an internal, and for an introvert, it's an internal recharging,
Yeah.
and for an extrovert, it's externally
Yeah.
recharging.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what the definition is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I
yeah,
think that's why I say, like, a lot of it is about the energetics, the energy.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes.
Um, one other, and I okay, we're coming up on almost an hour. We're gonna try our best to keep this to an hour. We talked about a lot of different
Yeah.
best practices,
Yeah.
right? One other best practice that I want to share before we close is the art of storytelling.
Mm.
Now, not all of us are good storytellers.
Mm-mm.
I myself am still trying to get
Same.
better at
Yeah.
storytelling. But one of the advantages of being an introvert
Mm.
is because we get our energy from our, internally, and because many introverts are great observers, right?
Mhm. Mm.
We're watching what's going on. We think very deeply. Because of that, we are in a position to have great stories because we're watching other people's behaviors,
Yeah.
right? We're very aware about things that are happening around us because
Mhm.
we're not necessarily always in the mix
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, what I would encourage is, particularly as a leader,
Mhm.
one of the ways that we can encourage people to see our vision and to kind of follow us from in terms of following the vision that we kind of
Mm.
set is to be able to tell great stories,
Yeah.
to be able to explain the why behind
Yeah.
the decisions that we make. And I think what I've seen many leaders how they make mistakes is that they assume that just because they say something or make an ask, that everyone is going to just fall in line.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe 30 years, 40 years ago, that might have been true. But
Right.
in this day and age,
Yeah.
I think the more people know and understand the reasoning behind what you're saying or why you're making that decision, the more they can internalize it themselves and kind of get behind it and support it.
Yeah.
So to me, I think all about storytelling. Like when
Mm.
you're able to tell good stories, when you're
Yeah.
able to help people connect the dots as
Yeah.
an introverted leader, that just gives you so much more influence,
Yeah.
and power to be
Yeah.
able to bring the masses with you,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see that yourself, Tashina,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I think something that you're calling out also in that is like we have the ability to slow things down a little bit. So like there's like the like let's get going, let's do things, and because we're always watching, we're observing, we can slow things down a little bit so that people are not rushed and they can really
Mhm,
see all the details of whatever it is, which
mhm,
is a key trait to have as a leader, because you don't want people to make, rash decisions, or, things that are just like, that didn't make sense, or we did this and we should have investigated a little bit more, like all the things. And so just that ability to like take our time, point out every piece or the details of the story is
yeah,
critical for any environment.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we are coming up on an hour's time together. We're wrapping up. We have spent a good deal of time today. Just brief recap. We have spent a good deal of time today telling our kind of origin stories, how we figured out we were actually introverts,
Yeah.
how we mirrored that, not mirrored, married that to being also leaders. We've talked about communication styles. We've talked about team leadership. We've talked about boundaries and setting boundaries, right? We've talked about using uh, using our awareness in terms of how we're behaving in different settings to help us determine, are we truly introverts, or maybe we may not be introverts, but we feel we need to behave as introverts in certain settings, which I think is a really good call out. So what I would ask you is any last tips or thoughts around our topic today that you want to share before we
Mhm.
wrap.
I think the main one to like just really be clear about is introversion is not bad. And there are such great, amazing leaders who are introverted. Find that as a superpower, find that as something that you can leverage and go do it, because you have two examples right here. Like, we're doing it, we're out in the world, we're successful, and we are introverted at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't see it as a bad thing.
Yep. 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 Um, I think I would just add to that. I I have always seen introversion as a strength,
Mm.
right? And but it took me a while to figure out how I could use it to my advantage.
Mm.
So regardless to where where you might be working, the company or the team department you might be in, maybe your direct manager maybe that person is an extrovert, right? And engaging with them isn't always easy because of your introverted tendencies. Or even, the when you think about how you're going to grow your career, and you're looking around your organization and you're seeing a lot of very strong, opinionated voices, and they're always talking, and you're constantly having to think, okay, how can I insert my thought here?
Right.
I think all of those are natural, and it takes some time to kind of find your rhythm. That doesn't mean it's better or it's worse than
Yeah.
your counterparts. You just need to figure out how you can use your strengths
Yeah.
to best position yourself, right? And to best position your ideas. So
Yeah.
I would say that that's a muscle that has to be built over time.
Yes.
And I think if you need help doing that, you have access
Mhm.
to Tashina, you have
Yeah.
access to myself.
Yeah.
But I would say that, particularly if you're looking to grow your career,
Mhm.
and take your career to the highest levels of leadership,
Yeah.
then figuring out what your strengths are and how you can best use them to not only position yourself but position your team, inside your organization and in your industry, I think that is a skill that once you learn it, that will shift the, shift the atmosphere for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would encourage you to start focusing on that if you haven't already, because I think that will catapult your career
Yes.
probably bigger than anything else will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for agreeing to join me. This was a very
Thanks for having me. Yes.
yeah, Sheena and I randomly met each other
Yes.
maybe a couple of months ago, and we didn't even think about doing
Yes.
this like a few weeks ago. So it's all been very organic, which
Yes.
I'm glad.
Yes.
So thanks for agreeing to do this with me
Thank
today.
you for having me. Yes. 2 introverts can meet.
And have a lively
And
discussion
yes,
and use some
yes.
progress. Exactly.
Yes.
All right. So thank you everyone who joined us live. Thank you everyone who is watching the replay. If you have specific questions about your situation or anything that we talked about today, you can feel free to drop it in the comments, or you can DM Tashina, DM me, and we will definitely get back to you. And until next time, keep leading your introvert way.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Okay. I can't find my end button. Hold on.